been a game of control versus faith, you could say. That's always been the push and pull. The forces of control do their job, testing the faith, and then the faithful do their job in pushing against the control. There's nothing broken here. But what we are seeing is the whole game coming to a head, in a sense. The game doesn't ever end in the eternal sense, but this phase of the game is coming to a head. So with the crackdowns, with every new move to try and limit expression on the one hand, and also to maybe be invasive informationally on the other hand, they're meant from the control side to look scary, because it's meant to slow you down. It's meant to keep you scared of being seen. But that's just it. I already know, you know who I am, everything about me, and I'm speaking to the quote-unquote controllers, right? I know y'all know. I know you'll have more data on me than I can consciously sit here and parse, so that as far as everything I've ever posted, my Social Security, my purchase history, everything, y'all got it. I make no... I just suffer no illusion about that. So it's not like whatever terms and conditions or whatever cameras everywhere, I'm not hiding from you. And I haven't been for a long time now. But that's because for longer than that, because even when I was in the fear of being exposed to, quote unquote, the negative forces of control, right? I was already, my deep-seated being, living as if everything was seen. And I'm not saying that when I walk out the door, everyone knows everything about me, but I act as if they do in my own head, because God knows. God has always known. So before there was even anyone collecting data on us, we only pretended we could hide, but we truly never could. And so if you already are in that space where you don't pretend that your secrets are not known by God, therefore, if they're known by somebody else, like a controller, say, do the controllers supersede God? Of course not. So why am I going to be afraid that they may know something about me that God already knows in spades? I'm not. Further, because God just supersedes the controllers, because God is just a term, I get that, and everyone plugs in the same way, but if we're using it as a concept of the source of all creation, it obviously is above and beyond any sides or any positions we may take. You have to see these moves apparently toward fascism, as they always tend to function when you look at it from the broad perspective, is it's condensing and isolating the controlling mindset, if you will, those who adopt the control nature in their heart. It tends to funnel them down. Then this is exactly part of the process, because what it's actually playing out in the deeper human sense, as far as the collective goes, is it's a place where that energy, right? It's a place where that energy condenses and collects, and in a way contains that energy, because it is going to be moved off the board into another board. This is not about divine retribution and all these kind of things. This is about the growth of consciousness. That all of these roles are necessary for this grand game to function. So you really have to make sure you're not hating the quote unquote controllers. I'm not saying you agree with what they're doing or that you would do that, but it's on a much more subtle level than that. In other words, I do think that there's some growth that those individual aspects of God, those individual consciousnesses, will likely have to go through vis-a-vis probably the experiences that some of us are going through right now in our journeys. So you could almost see it in a sense, if you want to see it that way, that maybe they're, even though it appears in this world that they're way ahead of the game, I would suggest that it's possible that they're actually, as it manifests here, that's a previous step in a soul's journey. Counterintuitive sounding, right? But the soul might have to go experience that top level of the control seat to take the next step. And we come into it not realizing that those working on their fate from the faithful side, right? That's already a move beyond the control mentality, whether we realize it or not in that sense. So when we're seeing these crackdowns, I know what it's about. Y'all know what it's about. You're well aware that this control, you're grasping at straws. And that's for those of you who believe it. I think some of the forces there know exactly what I'm talking about. And it may seem like anyone who played in that energy field must be evil and wish harm. But I would suggest, if you get up into God's realm of seeing this, sometimes you see that's what it takes. So as things tend to feel more constricted and tighter, what's actually happening is Christ is already busting at the seams. But he wouldn't reach, and I say I will not digress too far into this, but I don't want to dictate to anyone what Christ is supposed to mean. But I'm using it the same way I use God to say we understand what we're saying, and let's call it love, right? Love would not reach into some places without the friction, if you will. There are hearts that well, that's actually how this whole thing works. The only way we can see light in others, but the only way we truly tune in is going to have to be internally through ourselves. And so when you see the agents on the front line, the guards carrying out the orders of the controllers, right? Understand there's movement happening in their hearts too. And even though it looks so ugly what they're having to do, and some of them are very wrapped up in ugly places in their own heart. But this is affecting them too. So know this to everyone in the room. Controllers, faithful, everybody else, everybody out here. This whole show is not in the hands of an elite cabal. It never was. Some in the elite cabal are very aware of this. You know you are. Which is why there's a lot of fear in a lot of those hearts wrapped up, because even if not consciously already aware, subconsciously they already know they've lost. This can never be contained, because you know what's talking to you is not Brad, Lacey, this person that you have all the information on, that you could guess his next purchase and the next place he'll go and all these kind of things. You well know that what's talking to you is not that. And that love is not exclusive, which is why any one of us could be taken out physically. That's not hard. That's not a mystery. But that which is animating all of us, and I even mean those who are not aware at that level yet, that's immutable and is immovable. So when you see the crackdowns, when you see the big scary moves, and I'm not pretending that we may not see things that are going to be trying. You know what I'm saying? In our physical face, being put in our physical face. But just remember, what's true is already true. What's won is already won. And the key is simply within each and every one of our own hearts. Because I do think that we're coming upon a quote unquote a nexus point, if you will. And then the division is going to be between those who cling to control and those who embrace faith. And it may not look exactly like you think. There are very likely going to be many people in churches even whose hearts are actually still clinging to control. And that's okay. I'm not condemning anyone here. But I am saying that that's what's happening here. So pay attention to your own heart right here. And if you're scared about something, and you're scared about the world and the situation, and it's rough right now, don't attach to wanting to control that just to find your safety out of it. If that makes sense. Don't give in to feeling like it's too hard that, okay, I need to take control in a way which includes, protesting in the streets and things like that. I just don't think that's where it's at. I don't think that we have to physically go out there and convince our neighbor of anything we're talking about. I think we're long past that in the game. This is all about simply tending to what's in our own hearts at this moment. Are you scared? Would you allow a little control into your heart to feel that safety? Or are you scared but faithful in the love that many of us say we believe in, and know that we don't need to control on that level? Because do you really believe in that love? If you do, then there's just ultimate trust. And so I just don't think there's reason to fear. May things get uncomfortable. I've gone through life long enough to feel squeezed at times, right? And I'm not saying it can't get worse. Again, like I said, you could end me, this body. Okay. I'm not just this body, as many of you well know in yourselves that you're not just your body. And that energy is immutable, immovable, unstoppable, whatever you want to call it. Be well. Both. Controllers and the faithful, right? Because this is not about revenge or anything like that. It is about, well, let's just say this. There probably will be a humbling come to the controllers, and then you know what? They might see the path out of their misery. Because many times it's easy for folks on the other side to think that those at the top in this world are loving it, or they've made it. And that's part of the trick too, part of the story that they sell us on, that's what success is, get to the top of there. But you haven't lived in that space energetically. And I promise you, it's not the image you're sold. So yes, be well, both sides of the equation. Peace.